record.
Hi, it's Linda Lysakowski again with my cohort in crime here, Ellen Bristol.
Hi, everybody.
And this is the promised part 2 of the Smart Way Development Audit, preparing for the new normal post-COVID-19. And as we mentioned in part 1, we all are going to be facing a new normal, so we might as well get used to it now. But one of the things that I've told many of my clients, they can use this time to really focus on things like evaluation and assessment. So we're talking about development audits, and there are some challenges to do the 3 methods that we talked about in part 1. First of all, self-evaluation. You have to know that you have to go into this being completely honest with yourself and really looking at your organization as an objective outsider, and that's pretty hard to do. So for a lot of people, self-evaluation will help up to a point, but then there comes a time when you need that doctor to come in from the outside and give you an expert opinion. And sometimes it's just not as complete because you don't know sometimes what you want to evaluate. The leaky bucket that we talked about in last session is a great tool, but it has limitations because what it really measures is the productivity of your development office. It doesn't measure specific items like did you do well in your direct mail and how did you do in your special events and what kind of things ought you be thinking about improving on, and maybe some things that you ought to think about ditching totally. And of course, the disadvantage of the conventional audit is in most cases the money as well as the time that's spent to do this, because a development audit might cost you anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 or even higher. So those are some of the disadvantages of doing development audits. But let's talk about what works about development audits. In self-evaluation, there are some good things. What works is it gets you much more familiar with your budget history, and you start to look at things that maybe you never looked at before. Your donor records. If you have good donor records, it'll be easy to self-evaluate whether things are improving. Did you raise more money last year? Did you retain more donors? But if you don't have good records, that can be a disaster. And you can also help measure your progress against your strategic plan and against your development plan. So what's risky about it, of course, again, is are you really honest? You know, we put a picture of a runner here for a reason, because there are certain things that runners can do to evaluate their progress. They can check their stopwatches and see if they can obviously see if they're ahead of the other people in the race. But if they fall over on the racetrack, they need a doctor. They aren't going to be able to evaluate themselves. Did I have a heart attack, or am I just exhausted, or what's wrong with me? So there is some level that you just can't get when you self-evaluate. And maybe you don't have really accurate records to start with. So maybe you're basing some of your decisions on things that aren't quite accurate. And of course, you don't know the completeness. You as a staff person are going to find it very hard to evaluate staff and board members and volunteers, where an outside expert can do that. And then you can look at the timeliness of your projects. And sometimes you have people that force you into doing things maybe against your time budget. So there are a lot of drawbacks about self-evaluation, even though there are some things that work. Now, with a leaky bucket assessment, again, what really works is the statistics that we have gathered, and there's about 2,000 people who have taken this. So we're starting with a good pool of people. You're not comparing yourself to 3 or 4 other organizations in your community and seeing how good you're doing. So it does measure the productivity issues that maybe sometimes are overlooked, like are we spending enough money on development? Do we have the right staff in the right positions? Those kind of things. What's risky about the leaky bucket assessment is that it only measures 9 aspects of your development program. It's not a full, complete assessment, and we never said it was. So if you're looking for a full, complete assessment, that's not the place for you to go. It doesn't really give you all the details. And it doesn't give you recommendations for the future, no tactical reasons. No, it might give you some general ideas on strategy that you want to move forward, but doesn't really give you solid action steps that you can put into place to improve your results. Now, with a conventional development audit, again, we have a lot of good things and some risky things. What's good about it is it's going to dig into every aspect of your fundraising. When you engage a consultant and pay them maybe $40,000 or $50,000, they darn well better be looking at everything that reflects your development progress. So they're going to be looking at everything, including board involvement, volunteer involvement, technology needs, PR requirements. And it's going to talk about what's happening today and what you're missing. Maybe you're missing the boat on some things that you aren't participating in that other organizations are. So the consultant is coming there with background of having worked and done development audits with probably dozens, maybe hundreds of other nonprofits. What's risky about this, it does depend a little bit on the consultant. Some consultants are very experienced with development audits. I've done dozens of them, if not more. But some consultants are not really accustomed to a development audit, and maybe they don't even know everything that they should be looking at, or maybe they don't have the tools to really compare you with other organizations. And of course, it's very time consuming. And in some ways, it can actually disrupt your organization's workflow, because they're going to come in and they're going to want to interview different people in the organization, from the executive director, and if you have a PR director, and maybe your finance director, and maybe even your program people. So it is going to take some time and kind of disrupt things a little bit. And then, of course, the recommendations, again, might be unrealistic for your organization. So you need to make sure that the consultant understands what you really can implement once that report is in. And of course, it's very, very costly. As we've said, it can be very expensive to put together a full-blown development audit. So Ellen and I have worked over the last couple of years actually on this project. And we said, there's got to be an easier way for people to do this. There's got to be a way to give them that impartial assessment, but to make it less costly and to make it less intrusive into their daily operations. So we came up with a virtual way of doing this. And right now, because of COVID-19, we think this is a really great time to take advantage of the virtual development audit, because it's going to give you, and Ellen will tell you more about it in a minute, but what it's going to give you is a very low risk. You're not spending a whole lot of money to find this out, but you're still going to get some very comprehensive information. So I'm going to turn it over to Ellen and let her fill you in on what happens in an audit.
Great. Well, there are a few differences about the Smart Way development audit, as Linda has said. And we have to admit, I'm the technology geek between the two of us. So
for sure.
when Linda was helping me understand how she went about conducting a conventional audit back in the day, I was the one who said, why don't we automate this? Because we asked the same things of the same people in the same positions over and over again. So we thought, let's start by including our leaky bucket assessment. In spite of its limitations, as we said in part one, the leaky bucket assessment measures productivity of the fundraising staff. Do they have the capacity to do the work based on these 9 business disciplines that are standard proven practices in very high performing revenue generating teams. Also, the leaky bucket will compare your team's results to the global averages of all of the participants we have to date. And these are insights that tend to be unavailable in conventional audit. So that's the first difference in the audit program, the Smart Way development audit, that Linda and I put together. So we cut the price dramatically because it takes so many fewer consultant hours. And there's one version for COVID-19 that takes almost no consultant hours, which means you pay less and there's much less disruption to your staff. And I'm using the term staff here loosely because we've set it up so that information can be gathered from employees, volunteers, board members, and other strays you want to include. The data gathering is thus automated, and so is the data analysis. Good survey tools can do that for us in the current day and age. And right now, like we said in part one, no time like the present to become tech literate. We designed it so that you would see opinions from many voices. So it doesn't matter to us how many participants you want to include. And this is important for one particular reason that many of you may not have heard about. We want to see, I mean, all of us, we want to know what's working and what isn't working, right? In our development efforts. We also want to know something that we don't often think about, which is, does gift officer A think the same things are going on as the chair of the board development committee? Or are there gaps and differences in understanding among development staff, between staff and volunteers, between development staff and executive staff, and so on? So this approach of getting all that input is very valuable. We also set it up, those of you who have ever taken surveys may recognize the required statements versus the optional statements. So we set this up so that you can skip any portion that's not relevant to you. You know, if you're the grants manager, you may not know much about the planned giving program, or you might not have one. So here's how it works. We provide you with a code that you can have, again, as many members of your group as you want to complete the leaky bucket assessment. That's completely online. We collate those results and compare them to global averages. Then we have separate surveys for members of your staff and members of your board, and a survey to be filled out by one person, your executive director or CEO or whatever you entitle that person. And then there's a final little spreadsheet that collects important data about specific types of events and campaigns. When we work with you on all of these things, you'll get links to all of these instruments. And then you get reports with recommendations that includes collated data from all of the instruments, which I've listed here, the things that I mentioned earlier. Now, the results of this project are very rich. We say here on this slide, SmartWay Development Audit Data Report with recommendations. Let me refine that just a little bit, especially in this special offer. We can give you the data in graphic form and in spreadsheet form. And what we usually do is we also offer to write a narrative report. or to give our clients the option of taking the data to their favorite consultant or living without the recommendations. But this time around, we're offering it one of two ways, I should say. We can send you the data reports only, as I said, in graphs. Graphs are usually easy to read and to interpret. And that is going at a price of only $1,000. Or we can send you the data reports with recommendations. That won't be a full-blown narrative report. It'll be notes on each of the graphs, making certain recommendations or suggestions. We're holding this offer through the end of May. We could extend it depending on what's happening as this pandemic rolls along. But typically we charge $5,000 or more depending on the size of your organization. If you're interested in this, and we certainly hope you are, please email either of us or phone either of us to get more information and to take advantage of our special offer. We really hope you do, because we're in this like you are to help you achieve your missions. We want to see each of your organizations able to sustain and even improve your impact on the mission during this difficult time in global history. So I want to thank Linda for participating with me on this project.
Thanks, Ellen.
And thank you, Linda, for forging ahead on the Smart Way Development Audit. Folks, we're eager to hear from you. So write us, call us, give us feedback, and we look forward to working with you.
Right. And Ellen and I are both really excited about this. We've both been in the nonprofit sector for a long, long time. And this is really our way of giving back to the community, because we know you're on really trying times right now. And people are saying, well, we've had to call a halt on all new expenses. But this is something that I think you can do that's very affordable. In fact, I wonder if you can afford not to do it.
I'm with Linda on this. And between us, I think we'd be happy to entertain payment plans.
Yes.
So keep that in mind when you get in touch with us. And we're wishing you all the best. Stay safe, stay sane. We're all in this together.
Right.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye for now.